chosen one. Tonight, the heavens bend close to your name. The air around you hums with an unseen vibration, a holy stillness before movement. Something is shifting in the unseen. Something God has been preparing long before this night arrived. It is not chance that you are here. It is calling. Heaven has chosen this moment to touch the page of your destiny. You can feel it, can't you? The quiet between your heartbeats feels heavier than usual, filled with purpose. Every unanswered prayer, every tear, every closed door, they were not punishments. They were preludes. What looked like silence was divine strategy. You were never forgotten. You were being prepared. You were not left behind. You were being positioned. God never wastes pain. He never writes without purpose. Every line of your life has meaning, even the ones written in the ink of tears. What you thought was the end of a chapter was only the moment before a miracle. The author of creation has opened the book of your life again. And the next line begins tonight. The word of the Lord declares in the book of Isaiah, chapter 43, verse 19, "Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." This is not just a verse, it is your prophecy. God is doing a new thing in you tonight. The wilderness will no longer define you. The dry places of your life, where nothing seemed to grow, will soon overflow with living water. You are stepping into the chapter that changes everything. Listen carefully. Heaven has not forgotten your name. The pages that felt blank were never empty. They were reserved. God was waiting until the right hour to write again, until your heart was soft enough to receive, until you were strong enough to carry what comes next. Every moment that felt wasted was sacred timing. Every setback was an arrow being drawn back for greater release. Every disappointment was a redirection from the temporary toward the eternal. And tonight, that arrow is about to fly. You have felt unseen. You have asked why others moved ahead while you waited. But the truth is, God was not delaying you, He was developing you. He was shaping endurance in you, because the next chapter of your life requires deeper strength, higher clarity, and unshakable faith. There is a sound in the Spirit tonight, the turning of a page. Can you sense it? Heaven is realigning things in your favor. Doors that were sealed are about to swing open without your effort. Conversations are being arranged. Names are being mentioned in rooms you haven't entered yet. Because when God writes, nothing stays the same, but you must step into it. The author writes, yet you must walk. The ink flows, yet you must say yes. The next chapter is not automatic. It is activated by obedience. That's why this word reached you. It is a divine summons. You cannot cling to the old and still receive the new. You cannot reread old pain and expect new promises to unfold. Lay it down, the regrets, the comparisons, the self-doubt. God has already closed that chapter. Do not reopen what heaven has sealed. Instead, lift your eyes. The future is being written even as you breathe. There is power in your agreement. When you choose to believe, heaven accelerates. When you speak, heaven records. So right now, where you are, whisper this: Lord, write my story again. Feel that. That's the alignment of your spirit with His will. The moment you said it, something began to move. And now, I ask you to do one simple act of faith. Comment: the number 777 below, not as ritual, but as recognition that you are stepping into divine timing. That number will stand as your signature beneath heaven's declaration. A new chapter begins tonight. As this word finds you, take one more step. Like this message, share it with someone who is still stuck in yesterday, and subscribe to stay connected to the flow of what God is speaking. This is not entertainment, it is encounter. When you respond, you agree with what heaven is doing. Chosen one. The pen of heaven is moving. The story is shifting. The ink is fresh with grace. Tonight, your life's greatest chapter begins, one written not by fear, not by failure, but by the very hand of God. So breathe, stand tall, and lift your spirit high. The heavens are watching, the page is turning, and the author is smiling, because this time, the story ends in glory. You feel the air shift around you, heavy with meaning yet wrapped in silence. The night grows still, and for the first time, in a long time, you notice how the silence isn't empty, it's sacred. Something invisible lingers in it, like the calm before dawn. Heaven often speaks most clearly when everything else is quiet. This silence is not the absence of God, it is His presence preparing you. In these quiet hours, God rewrites your soul. He clears the noise that once clouded your vision, the endless thoughts that replayed your failures, the voices that told you you'd gone too far or waited too long. Tonight, that noise fades. The stillness is not a pause, it's a signal. The world sleeps, but the Spirit stirs. It is here, in this holy quiet, that revelation begins. God does not shout over chaos. He whispers to those who choose to listen. You have been asking for signs, for confirmation, for direction. But perhaps the answer is not in what you see or hear, but in what you finally stop running from. Silence has a language, and heaven is fluent in it. You have walked through seasons where the silence felt like rejection. You cried into the night and heard nothing back. You thought maybe you had been forgotten. Maybe you missed your calling. Maybe the story was over. But what if that silence was God's way of strengthening your spirit? What if it was never distance, but discipline teaching you to trust the author, even when you can't read the page? Every chosen one walks through this valley. Every prophet, every warrior, every dreamer must learn to be still. David did. Moses did. Even Jesus withdrew to lonely places before the next miracle came. The silence is not punishment, it's preparation. When the world stops applauding and the lights go dim, that is when heaven begins its deepest work. So do not run from this stillness. Sit in it. Let it wash you clean of hurry and fear. Feel your heartbeat align with eternity. The night is not against you, it's holding space for your becoming. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Habakkuk. Chapter 2, verse 3. For the vision is yet for the appointed time, though it tarry. Wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not delay. Those words carry power because they speak directly to this moment. The waiting was never wasted. Every day that felt still was another line of divine timing. God hides you, not to punish you, but to protect what He's planting. Seeds grow underground before they ever touch the light. You have been buried, not forgotten. Sometimes, silence is heaven's way of saying, be still until the roots are strong enough to sustain the promise. And now, You're almost there. The soil of your heart has been tilled by tears, softened by surrender. What was once resistance has become readiness. Think about it. Every miracle you admire began in obscurity. Joseph's dream was spoken in secret long before it reached a throne. Ruth's loyalty was proven in quiet fields before she walked into destiny. Daniel's integrity was shaped in silent prayer before lions ever roared. You are walking that same path now, the sacred corridor between promise and fulfillment. If you could see what heaven is arranging, you would not despise this pause. The silence you dread is where God sharpens your vision, shapes your strength, and hides you from enemies who are not ready to see your rise. You are not behind schedule. You are in alignment. The waiting has been holy all along. Let peace fill you now. You don't need to force the next move. You don't need to chase the next answer. The author is already writing. The hand of God never trembles, and his timing never errs. Trust that when the silence breaks, it will do so with clarity, so powerful it will make every unanswered night worth it. Rest in this quiet, for in it, heaven is whispering your next line, word by word, unseen yet unstoppable. Let the quiet wrap around you like a gentle mantle of peace. Every heartbeat becomes a promise, proof that God is near. Still writing, still weaving, still preparing you for revelation beyond imagination. Silence teaches you trust. In the absence of noise, faith finds its voice. When the world stops speaking, heaven begins to echo. Every breath you take now is sacred preparation for destiny's unveiling. Stay still a little longer. The next sound you hear will not be confusion, it will be calling, and when it comes, you will know the waiting was worth every silent night. You have felt the shift inside, quiet, steady, undeniable. What once felt like the weight of waiting has turned into a pulse of purpose. The silence that tested you has now prepared you for movement. Heaven has begun to turn the gears behind the scenes. Something you cannot yet see is aligning with your name. The same hand that held you through the dark is now lifting you into the light. You sense it, don't you? That gentle pull within, calling you forward. This isn't imagination, this is divine invitation. You are standing in the middle of a holy transition, the moment between the pain that shaped you and the purpose that now calls you. The storm did not destroy you, it refined you. The fire did not burn you, it purified you. What you endured was never wasted. The Apostle Paul reminds us in his second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 17. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. And no, that glory isn't waiting for you somewhere distant, it's rising inside you right now. Every trial you faced carried weight in heaven's design. Nothing you walked through was without meaning. The heartbreaks that almost silenced you have become fuel for the fire God is lighting in your spirit. The long nights that made you question your worth have become the foundation of your wisdom. You are stronger than you know, deeper than you appear, and far more chosen than you realize. What you call pain, heaven calls preparation. You were being trained for what others could not carry. The pressure you felt was not punishment, it was shaping. God was teaching your spirit endurance, teaching your heart obedience, teaching your soul how to hold divine power without breaking. And now, you are ready. You can sense that what once restrained you no longer fits. The walls of yesterday are too narrow for the person you've become. It's time to stretch. to step, to rise. Heaven's pen is waiting for your response. So now, as an act of faith, comment these 2 words, I'm ready. Now, type it not out of emotion, but as declaration. When you write, I'm ready, you are telling heaven, I will not shrink anymore. You are telling your past, you do not define me. You are telling fear, your voice is no longer final. These words are more than keystrokes, they are covenant. I'm ready means your waiting has turned into willingness. It means you are prepared to walk through the door God is opening. It means you no longer run from what's unfamiliar. You walk toward it with faith. Heaven does not respond to hesitation. It responds to readiness. The moment you type those words, you align yourself with divine acceleration. You've carried the weight long enough. You've questioned your strength long enough. You've looked at the ashes of what fell apart and wondered if anything good could come from it. But listen closely. Ashes are where anointing oil begins. Every broken piece becomes the vessel that holds your purpose. Every scar becomes proof that grace is real. You are not standing at the end. You are standing at the threshold. Every door that closed was never meant to punish you. It was meant to protect you until you were mature enough to walk through the right one. And that door is opening now. God is saying, this is your time. The page turns. The ink flows. And heaven begins to record your obedience. You have no idea how many destinies are tied to your courage to say yes. The story isn't just about you. It's about everyone who will find hope through your journey. When you say, I'm ready, you tell heaven that you trust even when you don't fully see. You declare that your faith outweighs your fear. And in that declaration, something shifts. The air changes. The unseen begins to move. Angels mark the moment. The divine author smiles, knowing the next chapter can finally begin. Chosen one. Tonight, readiness is your offering. Courage is your language. Surrender is your victory. And from this moment forward, your story will carry the sound of faith that says, again and again, I'm ready. When you said, I'm ready, heaven heard more than words. It heard surrender. It heard the sound of alignment. The moment your will met his purpose, every unseen door begins to unlock. Because readiness is the key that obedience turns. And now, God responds, Emoves mountains quietly, shifts hearts invisibly, arranges divine appointments supernaturally. You may not see the motion yet, but the script has changed. The author writes faster when faith replaces fear. Your I'm ready became his signal to begin. There comes a moment in every chosen one's life when what once felt final begins to make sense in reverse. The pages you thought were finished start to glow faintly, revealing words you missed the first time. You begin to see that what felt like loss was language, God's way of communicating something only pain could teach. The pages you thought were torn were, in truth, being turned. You see, God never ends a story where human understanding would choose to. Where you saw failure, he saw foundation. Where you saw endings, he saw editing. Every closed chapter has been a setup for this exact revelation. There is no wasted ink in your story, no meaningless sentence. Even your pauses have purpose. Even your scars have syntax. In the stillness of reflection, you start to recognize divine fingerprints on the moments that once hurt the most. You remember the rejection that left you breathless, the detours that confused you, the betrayals that hollowed your heart. And somehow, as you stand here now, you realize those were not interruptions, they were intersections. Each one redirected you toward the divine path, written long before you were born. The voice of God spoke through the prophet Jeremiah, chapter 30, verse 17. "But I will restore you to health and heal your wounds, declares the Lord." Those words don't merely comfort, they rewrite. They remind you that restoration doesn't mean returning to what was. It means transformation into what must be. God doesn't rewind, He rebuilds. He doesn't merely mend what was broken, He creates something stronger from the fragments. You once believed your story had run out of pages. You thought the pen had fallen silent, that heaven had moved on to other names. But what you didn't see was that God was preparing a new ink, a new chapter that could only be written after loss, taught you how to read differently. You learned empathy through emptiness. You learned discernment through disappointment. You learned faith, not when things were easy, but when they weren't. And now, those lessons become light. You begin to understand that redemption is not about erasing the past, it's about revealing its divine pattern. Every thread of your life, even the dark ones, is now being woven into something magnificent. You may not see the full tapestry yet, but heaven sees the finished design. There is beauty in how God hides His progress. Often, He lets the surface stay quiet while beneath, foundations shift and roots deepen. What you see as delay is often divine drafting. He rewrites silently, preparing you for moments that can only unfold when your heart is finally ready to hold them. If you could see what He's restoring, you would understand why certain things had to break. Some connections couldn't survive the weight of your calling. Some opportunities would have become cages. God loved you too much to let you stay bound to what was comfortable, so He allowed endings, not to punish, but to propel. This is the nature of divine authorship. He writes in paradoxes. Life springs from death. Strength grows in surrender. Victory rises out of defeat. The pen of heaven writes best in the ink of contradiction, turning what seems impossible into undeniable testimony. As you walk forward, you begin to notice that the pain has lost its sting. The memories still exist, but they no longer chain you. They've become teachers, sacred voices reminding you of how far you've come. You've grown into a resilience you didn't know you carried. You are stronger, wiser, softer, all at once. And here, in this gentle awareness, you discover a new kind of peace, the peace that comes not from having everything restored, but from realizing that nothing was ever truly lost. The story has always been under divine supervision. Every twist, every fall, every tear has been accounted for. You don't need to rewrite your past. You only need to understand it through the author's eyes. Because when you look back now, you see His signature everywhere, in the pain, in the perseverance, in the quiet mercy that carried you through when you had no strength left. This realization changes everything. The old pages remain part of your book, but they no longer define you. They become sacred history, proof that grace has been your companion all along. And so, you turn the page, not out of desperation, but out of revelation. You finally understand that God never stopped writing. He simply waited for you to see that every ending He allowed was only the beginning of a greater story yet to unfold. There are nights when heaven feels closer than breath, and this is one of them. The air around you hums with quiet wonder. The storm that once shook your soul has passed, leaving peace behind. You are standing in the aftermath of grace, where brokenness becomes beauty and ashes turn into light. The writings of David in the Psalms. Chapter 126. Verse 5. Declare, those who sow in tears shall reap with songs of joy. And you, chosen one, have sown in tears. You have believed in the dark, trusted through silence, and stood when standing hurt. And now the same God who saw your pain is turning it into harvest. As your story continues, remember this truth: every light you've received is meant to travel. Hope was never given for you to hold alone. It is a flame meant to pass from one hand to another. That is why when you feel a spark in these words, it is heaven inviting you to become part of the chain of light. When you share this message, you are not promoting content. You are extending a candle into someone's storm. You may never meet them, but your act of sharing becomes the bridge between their night and their dawn. And if this space has spoken to you, if it has helped you feel seen or strengthened, subscribe, not as a follower, but as a guardian of the light. Think of it as building a lighthouse together. Each subscription becomes one more brick that helps guide others home when waves rise high. There are also moments when faith calls for something deeper than words or clicks. There are times when your gratitude desires to take form. In those moments, your giving becomes the oil that keeps the flame alive. It is not payment, it is participation. When you give whatever your heart feels, led to imagine pouring oil into a lamp that never runs dry. That lamp burns for every weary soul still searching for a message like this one. So, if your spirit stirs and peace whispers, yes, donate as a quiet act of worship, as if laying a small flower on heaven's altar. No one compels you. No one counts. It is simply between you and the author who gave you this breath. Every drop of kindness keeps the light reaching further, touching lives you may never know. And don't forget, like this message, if it touched your heart, not out of routine, but as a way of saying, I see what God is doing here. Sometimes, a simple touch of agreement becomes the heartbeat that keeps this message alive across oceans and timelines. You are not just listening, you are building, you are helping write hope into the digital wilderness. Your faith, your kindness, your generosity, each act becomes ink in heaven's story. Thank you for walking beside this message. Thank you for letting your heart stay open. Together, we are not just spreading words, we are planting seeds. Together, we become proof that faith still breathes through connection. And may everything you pour out return, multiplied as peace in your home, laughter in your spirit, and miracles in your path. Because in God's design, what we release in love always finds its way back. Pressed down, shaken together, running over. The author still writes. And tonight, his pen moves through your willingness. There is something sacred about gratitude that turns into movement when your heart overflows. It seeks somewhere to go like a river searching for the sea. That movement is worship. It is how thankfulness takes on shape and changes the world quietly. In every story God writes, generosity becomes the ink of continuation. Each small act, each moment of compassion, keeps the narrative unfolding. It's how heaven says, the story is still alive. When you give kindness, when you share hope, you extend the rhythm of creation itself. Do you realize what happens when you support light? The darkness loses ground. Every small gesture, your prayer, your time, your sharing pushes back shadows you can't even see. You might never know whose life is touched, but heaven does. Heaven keeps the record. So tonight, let peace guide your decisions. Let your offering, however it comes, be born of joy and not obligation. God does not measure the amount, He measures the heart. And when the heart gives freely, blessings return multiplied. Invisible but certain. May this truth settle deeply. You are part of something divine. You are helping light move through time. Somewhere out there, a soul will breathe again because you cared enough to let your gratitude become action. The air feels different now, calmer, but full of anticipation. You can sense that heaven is still writing, still moving, still breathing through the story of your life. This isn't the kind of peace that means everything is finished. It's the peace that means everything is aligning. You've walked through the ache of waiting, through the breaking of old pages, and through the tender grace of restoration. Now, the new words begin to take shape. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Joel. Chapter 2, verse 25. I will restore to you the years that the locust has eaten. Those words are for you. Every lost opportunity, every wasted season, every heartbreak that stole time from your life, He is redeeming it all. God is not only giving back what was taken, He is adding more than you had before. This isn't recovery, it's resurrection. You might look at your life and see fragments, but heaven sees for Mahun. What you thought was broken beyond repair has become the foundation for something beautiful. You are not returning to what was, you are being elevated into what can now finally be. The chapters ahead are written in light, and the ink is faith. You've spent nights asking when, and heaven has been whispering now. The reason you can feel this stirring is because the shift has already begun. Destiny does not announce itself with noise, it moves quietly, like dawn spreading across the edge of night. This is the moment where your faith must respond. It is no longer about what you are waiting for, it is about what you are ready to carry. There is a spiritual alignment taking place right now, an unseen convergence where every delay suddenly makes sense. You are not just standing on new ground, you are standing on fulfilled promise. What others thought was over, God calls beginning. What others counted as loss, heaven counts as investment. Every tear you sowed has turned into soil for the blessings that are about to bloom. Right here, right now. I want you to anchor this moment with your declaration of faith. Comment the number 555 below. It isn't superstition, it's symbolism. The number 5 has always carried the mark of grace, and tonight, that grace is multiplied. When you type 555, you are saying, I receive multiplied grace for the new chapter of my life. It is a sign that you are not just reading these words, you are stepping into them. Let that number be your silent yes to heaven's invitation. When you comment it, picture it as a key unlocking the doors of new beginnings. You are marking your place in God's unfolding story, a sign in the timeline of heaven that says, this is when I stepped in. And as you do, remember this. Grace is not earned, it's received. It flows freely, but only fills open hands. Tonight, you open those hands not to grasp, but to let go. You release fear, regret, and hesitation. In return, Grace fills the empty spaces with divine abundance. This chapter of your life will not look like the last. The people, the opportunities, even the rhythm of your days will change. You will begin to see divine coincidences, doors opening in ways you cannot explain, and moments of peace that arrive out of nowhere. These are not random, they are reminders that heaven keeps its promises. And every time you feel uncertain, remember this night. Remember that grace multiplies where faith responds. Remember that your story is being rewritten, not with effort, but with surrender. The page has turned. The ink of destiny has already dried in heaven's book, but now it begins to appear in yours. You don't have to chase it, you only need to agree with it. So, breathe deeply. Let gratitude settle where anxiety once lived. Let joy replace the weight of wondering, for the author has spoken, and what he writes. No darkness can erase. Grace is here threefold, multiplied, overflowing. You have stepped into the current of divine timing, and nothing can pull you backward again. The moment you typed 555, heaven recorded it as a covenant of multiplied grace. It is not about the number itself, it's about your faith, agreeing with divine timing. Your spirit, whispering yes to God's unfolding plan. Grace begins to ripple outward now. It moves beyond your emotions, into circumstances, into relationships, into opportunities waiting to find you. That simple act of obedience opened invisible pathways that effort alone could never unlock. From this night forward, walk with quiet confidence. You are under the covering of multiplied favor. Every step you take will echo with heaven's assurance. You are guided, guarded, and growing in grace, unending. There is a kind of stillness that follows obedience, a deep, golden quiet that settles into the spirit after you've said yes to heaven. It's not the stillness of emptiness, but of completion. Something in you knows that a shift has occurred. The atmosphere around your life feels different, softer, lighter, like the first morning after a storm when the air smells clean again. You don't need to force anything anymore. The striving that once ruled your thoughts begins to fade. The anxiety that used to press against your chest loosens its hold. What you feel now is not weakness, it's peace. And peace, in the kingdom, is power. You are learning what it means to walk with grace instead of urgency. To move when led, not when pushed. To trust that divine timing doesn't need your panic to make things happen faster. The lessons of your waiting have shaped you into someone steady, patient, and attuned to God's rhythm. There's a strange beauty in realizing you no longer have to prove anything. You are no longer living to convince people who could not see your worth. You have already been approved by the one who designed you. The applause of heaven outweighs the silence of men. As the ancient words in the book of Proverbs, chapter 3, verse 5, remind us, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. This is what the new chapter feels like, trust that transcends comprehension. You don't need to know how everything will unfold. You only need to know who holds the pen. Faith no longer feels like struggle. It feels like surrender. When you look back now, you can see it all more clearly. Every detour had design. Every delay had direction. The road that once looked scattered now reveals a pattern. Each turn was leading you closer to alignment. You thought you were wandering, but heaven calls it walking by faith. The beauty of divine authorship is that even your mistakes become part of the masterpiece. The wrong turns, the broken plans, the failed attempts, all of it weaves together to form wisdom. The pain you once tried to erase now carries light, like cracks in pottery that have been filled with gold. What was once fragile has become your strength. You are no longer reading your story from the middle of the storm. You're looking back from the other side. And what you see now is evidence that grace works, that waiting matters, that obedience opens doors effort never could. But even in this piece, remember, the story is not done. God doesn't write flat endings. He writes crescendos, moments that rise and build and reveal more of his heart with every breath. This calm is not a conclusion. It's the preparation for greater revelation. There will still be challenges ahead. There always are. But now, you carry understanding. You know that storms don't mean failure, they mean formation. You know that silence doesn't mean abandonment, it means invitation. You know that endings are never final, they're just the preface to new beginnings written in bolder ink. Your spirit is being trained to respond differently now. Where you once panicked, you will now pray. Where you once resisted, you will now rest. Where you once doubted, you will now declare. This is the evidence of transformation, the quiet strength that comes from knowing the author personally. And as you move forward, you begin to notice that even your surroundings reflect the change. The same world that once felt heavy now looks different. The same conversations, the same days, they all carry more color, more meaning, because when the inside shifts, everything outside begins to align with it. The peace you carry becomes contagious. People who cross your path begin to feel calm without knowing why. You start to radiate stability, and that stability draws others toward light. You are no longer just a receiver of grace, you are becoming a vessel of it. This is what being chosen truly means, not being exalted, but being entrusted. God trusts you to carry His presence into ordinary places, to let your life be the message without needing to speak loudly. You will find that your silence will often preach louder than your words, and in that awareness, you find your rhythm again, the steady pulse of purpose that beats beneath everything you do. The noise of confusion fades, and all that remains is clarity. You are where you are meant to be, doing exactly what heaven has designed you to do. There is nothing left to chase, only things to receive, only stories to unfold, only grace to walk in. The author has not stopped writing. He has simply slowed the ink to let you breathe between lines. And as you exhale, peace fills the space where worry once lived. You are home in your calling, in your becoming, in the story that heaven continues to write through you. There comes a time when the voice of destiny stops whispering and starts settling. It no longer speaks in riddles or distant echoes. It begins to root itself within you. You start to realize that you no longer need constant signs or external confirmations, because what once felt uncertain now feels like home inside your spirit. The path is no longer something you chase, it's something you carry. The transformation is subtle but real. You wake up differently. The same sunlight that once felt ordinary now feels like a reminder. The world hasn't changed, but the way you see it has. You no longer look at your days through the lens of lack or fear. Instead, you see possibility everywhere, a quiet unfolding of divine orchestration. This peace is not the absence of challenge, but the presence of understanding. You know now that everything God allows has a reason, even when it's hidden. The wounds that once made you question his goodness have become reminders of his precision. You can finally say, "I didn't understand it then, but I do now." And the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verse 11, declares, "He has made everything beautiful in its time." And, you see, beauty does not always arrive on schedule. Sometimes it grows slowly, like light through stained glass, fractured at first, but glorious when seen from the right angle. God doesn't rush his masterpieces. He allows time to become part of the art. The waiting you once resented is now the very thing that gives your story depth. You begin to realize that not every season is meant to bloom visibly. Some are for rooting, some for refining, and some simply for resting. The world may not celebrate those hidden seasons, but heaven treasures them. In them, you have learned the difference between activity and purpose. You've discovered that fruit without foundation spoils quickly, but fruit that grows from deep roots lasts for generations. Every chosen one must walk through hiddenness before release. Moses spent 40 years in the desert before his name was known. David played unseen songs to sheep before his voice reached kingdoms. Even Jesus lived 30 quiet years before his ministry began. Hiddenness is not punishment, it's sacred preparation. And you, too, have walked through your own wilderness. But now, you can see that the wilderness wasn't empty. It was alive with divine intention. The stillness that once frightened you has become your sanctuary. You no longer crave constant validation because you know that what God builds in silence can never be stolen in noise. This awareness brings a different kind of confidence, not loud, not boastful, but unshakable. It is the confidence of knowing you are exactly where you should be. Even if others cannot see the fullness of what's unfolding, you have learned to walk at the pace of peace, not bunits. And in this rhythm, you start to experience heaven's favor in quiet ways. Doors open, not because you forced them, but because you were finally ready. The right people appear not because you chased them, but because grace brought them. What used to exhaust you now flows naturally. That's how divine timing feels. It doesn't rush. It releases. It doesn't demand. It delivers. It doesn't confuse. It clarifies. You begin to understand that the same God who holds galaxies in place also holds the details of your life with precision. So, breathe. You don't need to overanalyze what's next. The author is already several pages ahead. You only need to keep walking. Keep listening. Keep becoming. The story that once scared you now feels sacred. You are no longer trying to survive it. You are living it. One peaceful step at a time. And perhaps the greatest miracle of all is this. You no longer question if you are chosen. You simply know. You no longer ask when your time will come. You realize it's already here. The new chapter isn't waiting for you to arrive. It unfolds as you walk. In this realization, there is freedom. You stop rushing toward the future and start resting in it. You understand that the author's timing is flawless, his pen steady, and his intention unchanging. Everything that needed to happen has happened. Everything meant to come will come. And through it all, grace continues to write in golden ink across the pages of your becoming. You have entered the rhythm of divine flow. No striving, no fear, only trust. Every breath becomes worship. Every step becomes agreement with the author's perfect timing. written in eternal grace. Peace settles like morning dew upon your spirit. You realize the story isn't racing ahead, it's unfolding gently, exactly as heaven designed. And you are right where light begins. There are moments when heaven's silence turns into sound, not through thunder, but through realization. You stand at that threshold now. The stillness that has wrapped around you begins to pulse with meaning. You feel it in your chest, a heartbeat that's not just yours but echoes heaven's rhythm. You are standing between what has been fulfilled and what is about to begin again. The story God is writing doesn't end in calm, it expands in clarity. Every breath you take now is an unfolding. Every thought, a thread in the tapestry of purpose. What was once distant suddenly feels near. You no longer ask, when will it happen? Because deep down, you know it already has. According to the writings in the book of Philippians, chapter 1, verse 6, He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. Those words don't speak of a maybe, they speak of a guarantee. God never starts what He won't finish. You are not an abandoned draft. You are a masterpiece in progress. The ink of heaven never runs dry on the story of a chosen one. And yet, in this realization, something new awakens inside you. It's not ambition, it's assurance. You begin to see your reflection differently. You no longer recognize yourself through the lens of your wounds, but through the light of your worth. Everything that once disqualified you has now become proof of transformation. The places where you broke are now where His light shines through. You were not called to live halfway. You were called to live wholly, to step into every line of your purpose with conviction, courage, and compassion. You are not simply being restored, you are being released. The lessons that once weighed you down have now turned into wings. You carry wisdom in your words, hope in your scars, and grace in your gaze. Every chosen one reaches a point where they must speak agreement into existence. Faith grows when voiced. Heaven listens not only to prayers but to proclamations. That's why now, I want you to take a moment quietly, intentionally, and comment these words. I'm awake. No, say it not as a phrase, but as a declaration. I'm awake means your spirit has risen from the sleep of doubt. It means you see clearly now the signs, the seasons, the divine alignment you once overlooked. When you write those words, you are saying to heaven, I recognize this is my moment, and I refuse to drift back into fear. It's a simple phrase, but its echo reaches eternity. When you declare, I'm awake, angels take note. The author hears. The script shifts from waiting to walking. Awareness is the key that unlocks the next phase of your destiny. Awakening is not about noise, it's about noticing. It's seeing the fingerprints of God on ordinary days, hearing His whisper in common moments, and realizing that you are never alone in your story. This is the spiritual awakening that changes everything, not through power, but through perception. You no longer pray out of desperation. You converse out of relationship. You no longer chase purpose. You walk with it. You no longer fear the unknown. You trust the unseen. That's what it means to be awake, to be aware, aligned, and alive in divine timing. As this understanding sinks deep, your life begins to hum with holy rhythm. Conversations shift, choices align, and your steps feel guided again. The same world that once felt heavy now feels holy. You start seeing light, where you once saw loss, opportunities where you once saw endings. You realize you are not just part of the story, you are part of the sentence. Heaven is still speaking. And that sentence carries power. You are the continuation of divine expression, the living proof that God still moves through human hearts. So say it again, quietly or aloud. I'm awake. Feel how those words fill the air around you. Feel how they break through the old fog of fear and usher in the dawn of clarity. This is your moment of realization, and heaven celebrates with you, because when the chosen awaken, the world changes, light spreads, hope breathes, and the author smiles. Benin Hunt, writing the next brilliant line of your destiny. When you whisper, I'm awake, heaven answers with movement. Circumstances begin to shift. Not because you forced them, but because awareness carries authority. The moment your spirit opened its eyes, creation responded in perfect alignment with your renewed vision. Stay aware. Every day from now on is sacred ground. To be awake means to notice grace in the smallest things, each sunrise, each breath, each miracle quietly unfolding before you. There's a warmth that follows, awakening, gentle, golden, alive. It's the feeling of stepping into sunlight after years of walking beneath clouds. You begin to sense how every breath, every heartbeat, is part of something eternal. You aren't chasing meaning anymore. You're discovering it in motion. Every act, every word, every kindness ripples through eternity, like waves born from the smallest stone. The prophet Isaiah spoke in chapter 60, verse 1. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. That's what this season is about. Your light, the quiet, radiant glow that tells the world, I'm still here. I've survived. I believe again. But light doesn't exist for itself. It exists to guide. Your presence carries that same purpose. The radiance within you was never meant to stay hidden. It was designed to spread, to reach others still walking in shadow. And that's where our journey together continues. Each message here is a lantern lit for you, and through you, for someone else. When you share this message, you are not promoting words, you are passing a torch. Somewhere, someone is standing in darkness, and your small act becomes the spark that leads them home. When you like this message, you are not just reacting, you are breathing oxygen into the flame. Every touch of agreement tells the unseen world that light still matters, that faith still lives, that grace still speaks through ordinary voices. It's a whisper that says, I'm part of this light too. And if you feel a stirring inside, a desire to stay connected to what heaven continues to speak here, subscribe, not as a follower, but as a keeper of the flame. Each new soul that joins this space becomes another wick, ignited another candle in the great constellation of chosen ones scattered across the earth. Together, we make the night brighter. There is also a deeper, quieter invitation, a moment where faith becomes generosity, not the kind that demands, but the kind that delights. When you give, you are not paying for words, you are planting seeds. You become a gardener of hope. The soil of this space grows stories, comfort, restoration, and truth for hearts you may never meet. Every seed, small or large, turns into light that travels farther than you imagine. Imagine your giving as a river flowing through dry valleys. It moves softly, finding its way into unseen places, reviving what was forgotten. Or imagine it as oil poured into lamps that burn long after you've gone to rest. Each drop sustains the message. Each gesture extends the reach of light to corners that algorithms alone could never find. No one is required. Nothing is forced. This is a table open to anyone who wishes to bring their offering of faith. However it looks, donate only if peace leads you. Give the way. Sunlight gives freely, naturally, without expectation of return. Because in the divine economy, what leaves your hand never leaves your life. It returns multiplied, pressed down, overflowing in joy and provision. And if your heart says, "I have little to give," remember, prayers are gold. Attention is presence. Kindness is currency. Every amen, every word of encouragement, every quiet act of sharing keeps the light alive. You are already part of this divine ecosystem of hope. We are travelers together, walking the same illuminated road. The more we light for others, the brighter the path becomes for all of us. So, thank you for being here, for believing, for allowing these words to touch your heart. Thank you for being the reason the flame keeps burning. May everything you release, whether it's a share, a prayer, a subscription, or a gift, return to you as peace multiplied like sunlight, reflected 1,000-fold on calm water. That's how heaven works. What begins in love always ends in abundance. And as you move forward from this moment, remember, you are not alone carrying this torch. Across the world, others, just like you, are holding their light high, keeping hope alive, one heartbeat at a time. Together, we are the living proof that even in the darkest night, the light still wins. The light within you is not fragile, it's eternal. It was never borrowed, it was bestowed. Each time you share it, heaven multiplies it, turning your simple act into everlasting illumination. Giving, in any form, is creation. Every gesture becomes a spark that writes love into the dark. You are part of the divine rhythm of renewal. Walk forward with open hands. What you release in love will always return in light, reminding the world that generosity is the heartbeat of heaven itself. The light has settled around you now, not as a blazing fire, but as a steady flame. It no longer flickers in fear of the wind, because it has learned that storms do not extinguish what heaven has ignited. You walk differently now. The same path that once felt uncertain has become a place of quiet confidence. Every step you take carries the weight of divine authorship, and every moment feels laced with unseen purpose. Peace, once fleeting, has become familiar. It lingers in your mornings and rests in your nights. Even when the world rushes around you, you find yourself anchored in calm. You have discovered the rhythm of grace, one that doesn't demand perfection but delights in progress. You understand now that growth is not a straight line, it is a spiral, looping through lessons, revisiting old places with new eyes. You've stopped fearing repetition because you know that every return holds revelation. Each time, life circles back. You see something you missed before. What once felt like delay now feels like depth. You are not stuck, you are being sculpted, refined with care by the hands that have never left you. According to the writings in the book of Psalms, chapter 16, verse 8, I have set the Lord always before me, because he is at my right hand. I shall not be moved. Unwavering. That verse has become the quiet anthem of your life. You are learning that stability isn't found in control, it's found in closeness. When your focus stays fixed on the one who writes your story, even chaos begins to lose its authority. You no longer ask the wind to calm, you simply learn to stand still in its presence. There's a sacred maturity growing inside you now. It's not loud, not dramatic, but deeply grounded. You've learned that faith doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, "I trust you anyway." You've discovered that miracles often begin as mundane moments. The same God who parts seas also pours peace into small, everyday spaces, into conversations, into breaths, into the simple courage to keep going. You've also begun to see people differently. Where you once saw opposition, you now see opportunity for grace. Where you once guarded your heart out of fear, you now open it out of wisdom. You no longer take offense easily because you've learned that wounded people often speak from their own storms. Compassion has replaced resentment, and forgiveness has become your quiet rebellion against bitterness. The more you grow, the more you understand that holiness is not distance, it's presence. It's being fully alive in the world without being consumed by it. You carry peace into places that have none. You speak gently where others shout. You love even when it costs you. And that love, unforced and steady, becomes the language through which heaven speaks. Every chosen one eventually reaches this point, the shift from asking for blessings to becoming one. You no longer wait for external validation because your existence itself is evidence of grace. The mere fact that you've survived everything designed to destroy you is testimony enough. You carry the proof of divine favor in your endurance, in your ability to still hope after heartbreak. You are the living echo of the promise that God keeps what He begins. The story of your life has become an altar built not from perfection, but from perseverance. Each stone represents a moment when you could have quit, but didn't. Each line of your story holds the fragrance of faith that refused to fade. And now, as you move forward, you no longer walk with fear of what might come. You know that even when life surprises you, heaven never will. You've learned that divine order is rarely obvious, but it's always operating. What looks like chaos to you is choreography to God. The beauty of your new chapter is not in grand events, but in simple awareness. You see blessings hiding in plain sight, in laughter that returns after sorrow, in the stillness between tasks, in the peace that meets you unannounced. You have become fluent in the quiet language of grace. You are no longer waiting for your story to start. It's already happening in the pauses, in the prayers, in the steady turning of unseen pages. And as you walk through the coming days, may you remember, you don't carry light to prove anything. You carry it because you are it. You are the continuation of divine promise, the living chapter of grace, unfolding in real time. Each breath is a sentence, each choice a word, and together they tell the story. Heaven dreamed through you. The days ahead are not uncertain, they are unwritten, and the ink is in God's hand, flowing with mercy, wisdom, and promise. You have walked through silence, through storms, through sacred awakenings. Now you stand at the edge of fulfillment. Everything within you senses that the script is shifting again. It's not chaos, it's creation. Heaven is composing the next movement of your life, and you are being invited to turn the page. You have felt it recently, a pull, a hum beneath ordinary moments. as though the atmosphere itself carries your name. It is the sound of divine timing gathering around you. The same God who called you through the valley is now calling you into visibility. The season of hiding has served its purpose. The light you carry is ready to be seen. The voice of the Lord came through the prophet Jeremiah. Chapter 33, verse 3. Call to me, and I will answer you, and show you great and mighty things which you do not know. This promise is alive tonight. God is saying, speak, and I will reveal. Ask, and I will unfold. What comes next requires not effort, but expectation. He is preparing to reveal what was once concealed, to lift the veil between prayer and manifestation. You don't have to strive, you only have to stay open. But heaven always looks for a sign of agreement, a moment when faith moves from thought to action. So now, as a symbol of your readiness, comment the number 111 below. This number is not random, it is prophetic. It symbolizes divine beginnings, unity, and alignment with the first breath of creation. The number 1 represents the start of all things, the moment light pierced darkness for the very first time. When repeated threefold 111, it becomes heaven's code for perfect unity. The Father, the Son, and the Spirit working together to establish a new order in your life. When you type 111, you're saying to heaven, I agree with the new beginning you're writing. I align with divine unity. I welcome the first light of my next chapter. It is not superstition, it's symbolism. It is faith turned tangible. Take a moment before you type it. Breathe. Let your spirit understand the meaning. This is not about digits on a screen, it's about declaration. It's about stepping into synchronization with the rhythm of heaven's design. The moment your heart agrees, heaven begins to move in ways unseen. You may not see results instantly, but that's not how beginnings work. A sunrise doesn't arrive in one burst of light. It unfolds gently, coloring the horizon before the full day comes. That's how God works. Gradual revelation, steady glory. The light of this new chapter is already rising across your life, even if dawn is still faint. When you choose to respond in faith, you're doing more than acknowledging truth. You're activating it. You're saying, I am ready for divine alignment, fresh start, and holy unity. The number becomes your signature on heaven's decree of renewal, and soon you will notice that the world around you begins to echo that change. Where confusion once lived, clarity will enter. Where fragmentation lingered, focus will return. Conversations will flow easier, opportunities will align naturally. Because when heaven establishes order within you, everything external begins to follow. This is what the number 111 means. It's not luck, it's language. It's heaven's shorthand for, let there be light. The same phrase that birthed galaxies now whispers through your life, calling order from chaos and creation from emptiness. So when you comment 111, let it be your covenant of clarity. Let it mark this moment in eternity as the night your story realigned with divine intention. Angels take note of such moments. Their wings move at the sound of your faith. And as heaven writes the next sentence of your life, peace begins to pour through the cracks of what was once broken. Your steps find rhythm again. The timeline that once felt delayed begins to move with purpose. You realize the waiting was never wasted. It was preparation for this perfect intersection of grace and readiness. Now the author writes again, and the ink flows easily. Your story turns. Your spirit aligns, the light returns, and heaven whispers over the page. A new beginning has been sealed. And the moment you typed 111, heaven recognized your surrender as agreement. It wasn't the number, it was your yes. That simple act echoed through eternity, signaling that the chosen one had embraced divine unity and the birth of something new. And now, alignement unfolds. Order replaces confusion. Purpose replaces wandering. Every step from this point forward carries the rhythm of creation's first light, steady, certain, unstoppable. The night has quieted again, but this silence feels different from the ones before. It no longer carries the ache of waiting or the weight of uncertainty. This silence is sacred. It hums with fulfillment. You can sense that heaven has already shifted something within and around you. It is as if your life has found its rhythm again, moving in step with divine timing instead of resistance. You no longer look for signs because you have become one. Every breath, every thought, every act of kindness reflects the author's presence through you. The light within is no longer flickering. It burns steady and calm. It no longer demands attention. It simply illuminates. That is the quiet authority of those who have walked through fire and returned as flame. In this stillness, you realize that transformation was never meant to be loud. It doesn't always come with applause or recognition. Sometimes it happens in the most ordinary moments, in the way your heart no longer trembles where it once did, or how peace now stays even when plans shift. God has not changed your circumstances as much as He has changed your sight. The book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 28, declares, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." End 4. These words are no longer theory to you, they are testimony. You've lived them. You've seen how even the most confusing chapters carried divine logic, how even heartbreaks were sacred pathways leading you home. Every disappointment carved space for something better. Every detour redirected you toward destiny. You are finally beginning to understand that nothing was wasted, not the tears, not the pauses, not the goodbyes. There is a wisdom that only comes after walking through seasons that tried to silence you. It's a quiet knowing that doesn't need explanation. You no longer need to prove your worth or defend your process. The story itself speaks louder than any justification. What once felt like breaking was really building. What once felt like loss was simply making room. You carry that understanding now like a hidden treasure, gentle, steady, and unshakable. You don't cling to the future in fear anymore. You lean into it with faith. You trust that whatever awaits will be right, because the author who writes your story doesn't make mistakes. This is what maturity in grace feels like, not the absence of questions, but the presence of peace. You've stopped demanding answers and started appreciating the mystery. You no longer need to control every detail. You've learned to rest in divine precision. The pace of heaven may be unpredictable, but it is always perfect. You also notice how your heart has softened. Where judgment once lived, compassion now grows. You see others not as threats, but as travelers, each carrying their own unfinished story. You understand now that being chosen isn't about being above, it's about being available. It's about letting your life become a reflection of divine patience, love, and mercy. You start to recognize that God's fingerprints are not only on your blessings, but also on your boundaries. The people who left, the doors that closed, The endings that hurt, all of them, were necessary edits in the manuscript of your life. The author didn't erase them in anger, he removed them in love, so the plot could move forward unhindered. And now, as you look back, the pieces fit. The shadows make sense. The pain feels purposeful. You can finally see how every season, no matter how chaotic, was part of a divine sequence. What once made you question God's silence now makes you worship His wisdom. You have entered a new level of stillness, not emptiness, but fullness. The kind that makes you whisper instead of shout. The kind that lets you smile without explanation. The kind that anchors you so deeply that even the winds of change can't uproot you anymore. And in this place of peace, you begin to dream again, but differently this time. You don't dream from desperation, you dream from direction. You dream knowing that heaven's timing will always outshine human timing. You trust that what belongs to you will never need to be chased. It will recognize you when it's time. The pen is still writing, but you are no longer afraid of what comes next. You have learned to love the process as much as the promise, and in that surrender, you have found your true strength. You are living proof that grace finishes what pain began. Every page has purpose. Every pause has promise. And the story still unfolding through you is nothing less than holy continuation. There is a gentleness in this part of your story, a quiet glow that follows endurance. You have walked through the noise, through the wilderness, through the ache of unknowing, and now you stand in a kind of calm that can't be taught. It is the calm of someone who has faced the fire and learned that survival isn't the miracle, transformation is. Everything around you seems to have slowed, not because the world has changed, but because your heart finally beats in rhythm with heaven's timing. You are no longer racing to prove, chasing to earn, or striving to be seen. You have entered the sacred space between effort and ease, where trust has replaced tension. The peace you once prayed for has quietly become your natural state. You realize now that the world doesn't need louder voices, it needs steadier hearts. You no longer crave grand revelation or dramatic proof of purpose. You've seen enough to know that God is in the small things, in the morning light touching your face, in the forgiveness that comes easier, in the steady rhythm of breath that says, I am still here. The Word of God reminds us through the book of Isaiah, chapter 30, verse 15. In returning and rest you shall be saved. In quietness and trust shall be your strength. Len, you understand now why strength and quietness are twins. It takes strength to stay gentle, to remain calm in a culture of noise, to believe without constant validation. You've discovered that real power is not in motion, but in stillness, the stillness that holds faith when everything else shakes. This kind of peace doesn't mean you will never face storms again. It means you now know who commands them. You have seen too much of His faithfulness to fear the waves. Even when the water rises, you know the voice that calms, it lives within you. That awareness changes how you move, how you speak, how you respond. There is a wisdom in you now that wasn't there before, the kind that cannot be learned from books or borrowed from others. It is born only from experience, from surrender, from learning to see God's hand even when His face felt hidden. That wisdom has become your crown, unseen but undeniable. And perhaps what's most beautiful is this: you are no longer afraid of endings. You've learned that every ending carries a seed of continuation. What feels like closure to one chapter is simply preparation for another. The author's ink never dries, His story flows beyond every boundary you thought defined you. You've become content in the rhythm of divine rewriting. Plan may shift. People may come and go. But you remain centered. Your peace no longer depends on outcomes. It depends on presence. You have finally found that sacred simplicity that the world often overlooks, to just be where God has placed you, fully, faithfully, gratefully, and in that posture, blessings no longer feel like surprises. They feel like confirmations. You start to notice how things fall into place without your struggle. Doors open with gentle precision. Answers arrive before questions leave your lips. You realize this is what it means to live aligned, to walk not ahead of grace, not behind it, but inside it. The old version of you that lived in constant hurry has dissolved. The new you moves differently, slow enough to hear the whisper, strong enough to follow it. You walk softly now, carrying peace like an inheritance. You don't force moments anymore. You flow with them. This is the quiet authority of the chosen. It doesn't demand recognition. It radiates assurance. You have become a reflection of divine steadiness, someone who no longer panics when plans shift. Because you've learned that God's detours are never mistakes. The path ahead might still twist and turn, but you no longer fear it. You've stopped asking, "Why me?" and started saying, "Use me." You've realized that being chosen is not about being celebrated, it's about being trusted with purpose. And as you walk into what's next, your heart carries one truth, that the same hand that guided you through the storm will guide you through the sunrise. The same voice that called you out of confusion now calls you into clarity. You have nothing left to prove, only love left to live. So you rest not in passivity, but in promise. The author has not closed your book. He has simply paused to let you breathe between miracles. The next chapter is already written in grace, waiting for you to step into it with peace as your companion and wisdom as your crown. The light has become steady now. Like a candle that no longer fears the wind, you walk with quiet strength, not because everything has been explained, but because peace has taken the place of needing to know. The storms that once shook your faith now serve as proof that you were never alone in them. You've learned how to rest in what you cannot control, how to trust in what you cannot see, and how to keep walking even when the road disappears beneath your feet. And in this calm, something beautiful begins to bloom. Gratitude. It doesn't shout. It sings softly. Gratitude for the lessons, for the breaking, for the mending, for the rewriting. You realize that every scar is a verse. Every tear is a testimony. Every pause was a paragraph meant to teach you how to breathe again. You are not the same soul that began this journey. You are the story's refined version, the living proof that grace rebuilds what pain tried to destroy. As the writings of Paul in his letter to the Galatians, chapter 6, verse 9, remind us, "Let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we shall reap, if we do not lose heart." You have not lost heart. You've gained one, remade by mercy. And now, this story is not meant to stay locked inside you. Light unshared dims, truth unspoken fades. The same way, stars shine best when they scatter across the sky. Your story finds its meaning when it reaches others who still search for dawn. When you share this message, imagine it as releasing a lantern into the night. It floats silently across digital skies, carrying light to someone you may never meet, somewhere, A weary soul will look up, see that glow, and remember that hope still lives. You don't share for attention, you share for awakening. When you like this message, picture yourself adding a drop of oil to the flame. That simple touch keeps the fire alive, letting it burn longer, reaching further. It's a small act, but heaven notices small things done with love. And if this journey has stirred something deep within you, if the words have found a home in your spirit, subscribe, not out of habit, but out of harmony. Think of it as standing in a circle of light, where voices of faith gather to listen, learn, and grow. Each heart that joins becomes another note in heaven's song of restoration. Then there's another way, quieter but deeply sacred. When you donate, it's like planting a seed in unseen soil. You may never see all the fruits it bears, but heaven does. Every gift, no matter its size, becomes part of the divine ecosystem that keeps this space alive. It fuels the lanterns, fills the lamps, sustains the message that has carried you and will carry others. No one compels you. Nothing is demanded. This is not a transaction, it's transformation. You give because light multiplies when love moves freely. You give because you've tasted the peace that generosity brings. Think of it like breathing. What you exhale becomes the air someone else needs to survive their night. And even if what you offer tonight is only your time, your reflection, or your prayer, it is enough. Every act of alignment strengthens the bridge between hearts. You are already part of this living story. Already one of the voices heaven uses to heal the world, one whisper at a time. Comment a few words below. Not as routine, but as recognition. Imagine your words as tiny stars scattered across a midnight sky. Each one adds light to someone's night. Each one whispers, "You're not alone." Whether it's an amen, a prayer, or a few sincere words, your comment becomes a living echo of faith. It isn't noise, it's connection. The kind heaven notices. And as this light moves forward, may your own heart be filled with a quiet joy. May your giving return as warmth, your sharing return as peace, and your belief return as blessing. This is the divine circle. What you release in love will always find its way home, multiplied. Thank you for being here, for holding space, for walking through each line with openness. You are not just reading, you are participating in the sacred flow of restoration. Together, we are building a river of grace that carries hope far beyond what eyes can see. And as you move forward, remember, no act of faith is ever wasted. Each word, each gesture, each offering, spoken or silent, becomes a thread in heaven's tapestry. Through you, the story continues to shine. Through you, the message becomes movement. Through you, the flame will never die. The air feels softer now, like creation itself has exhaled. You stand at a place in your journey where peace no longer feels borrowed, it belongs to you. What once came and went like waves has settled into the quiet rhythm of your spirit. You have become the still water after the storm, the steady flame after the wind. There is no need to chase confirmation anymore. Your life has become evidence of divine authorship. You can see it now, the thread running through every season. The tears that once blurred your sight have become lenses of clarity. Every disappointment, every detour, every night that felt endless was never wasted. They all served a purpose too intricate for your understanding at the time. But now, standing here, you can trace God's handwriting through every shadow and realize it was all necessary. This is the moment of holy comprehension, the awareness that the author never once stopped writing, even in silence. His pen moved, even in pain. His ink flowed. You were being refined between the lines, strengthened in the spaces where no one else could see. What you thought was a pause was actually preservation, as written in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 31, verse 8. The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Those words are not promises for someone else. They are reminders for you. The same God who walked beside you through your wilderness now walks ahead of you into your tomorrow. You were never forgotten, only prepared. Every silence was a strategy. Every setback was sacred training. You were being shaped for this very peace. And now that you've reached this point, you realize that peace isn't the absence of struggle, it's the presence of understanding. The battle was never about your circumstances, it was about your becoming. God wasn't trying to change what was around you, He was changing what was within you. You see now that strength is not hardness. True strength is softness that refuses to break. It is the quiet endurance that smiles through the storm and whispers, "Still, I trust." The old you used to seek control. The new you seeks communion. You've traded striving for surrender. And in doing so, you've found freedom. It's in this stillness that gratitude grows wild. You find yourself thanking God for things that once made you weep. You realize how pain shaped your compassion, how loss carved space for new blessings, how loneliness became the soil for your deepest intimacy with the divine. Nothing was wasted. Everything became worship. You no longer measure progress by speed or success, but by peace. The quieter your heart becomes, the clearer you hear heaven's whispers. You no longer ask for signs because you've learned to recognize His tone in your thoughts, His fingerprints in your days, His reflection in your resilience. The beauty of this chapter lies not in motion, but in meaning. You don't have to do more to be more. You simply have to be present to show up to your own life with awareness and gratitude. You understand now that your calling was never a destination. It was a way of being. This understanding frees you. You begin to walk lightly, unburdened by the need to prove, unafraid of what's ahead. You no longer chase doors. You let the right ones open. You no longer pray from panic. You pray from peace. The rhythm of your life has synced with heaven's heartbeat, slow, sure, and full of grace. The horizon before you no longer intimidates, it invites. You sense that the next chapter will not come through striving, but through simple obedience. What you've learned in stillness will carry you through movement. You are not starting over, you are continuing deeper. This is what it means to live as a chosen one, not to have escaped pain, but to have been transformed by it. To stand unshaken, not because life grew easier, but because your roots grew deeper. To love freely, forgive quickly, and walk gently, knowing every step is guided by unseen grace. So you rest your hands now, no longer clinging, no longer reaching, just open. You breathe in peace, breathe out gratitude, and feel the divine rhythm pulsing quietly through your life. The story is still unfolding, but you are no longer afraid of the unknown. You trust the author completely. The wind whispers through the pages. And you smile. You don't need to see the ending to know it's good. The one who writes your story has never failed at his craft, and this, too, will be beautiful. You can feel it, the quiet majesty of completion. The air itself seems to hold its breath around you, as if creation recognizes that something sacred has reached fulfillment. This isn't an ending marked by sadness, but one wrapped in reverence. You have come full circle. What began with longing now settles into understanding. The same heart that once trembled in uncertainty now beats in rhythm with grace. You look back, not with regret, but with awe. Every chapter joyful, painful, silent, or storm-filled brought you here. You remember the moments when faith felt fragile, when prayers seemed unanswered, when you almost gave up, and yet, here you stand, proof that endurance was worth it. The God who started the story never stopped writing. The ink of mercy never dried. Every tear, every triumph, every turning point was a sentence in the masterpiece that is your life. The ancient psalmist wrote in the book of Psalms, chapter 138, verse 8, "The Lord will fulfill his purpose for me. Your steadfast love, O Lord, endures forever." No, you understand those words now, not as promise alone, but as lived reality. Purpose was never something you had to chase. It was something that grew quietly as you trusted, as you stayed, as you believed. Even the pages that once seemed blank are now full when read through the lens of hindsight. What once looked like silence was sacred speech. What once felt like loss was divine exchange. This chapter is different because it carries peace that doesn't ask for proof. You no longer search for meaning in every moment. You've learned that meaning is already embedded in existence itself. Every breath is a sentence of grace. Every sunrise, another paragraph of promise. The story continues, not through striving, but through stillness. You've come to see that life with God is less about climbing and more about becoming. You used to measure success by what changed around you. Now you measure it by what has changed within you. You've learned the language of surrender, and it has become your song. You no longer fight to be understood, because being known by heaven is enough. There is a strange beauty in how endings whisper instead of shout. They don't announce themselves. They arrive like a soft dawn after a long night. You realize now that heaven never rushes closure. It writes it gently, allowing every truth to settle deep into your being. And that's what this moment is, a settling, a stillness that says, "It is well." You see, this story was never about perfection. It was about participation. God never asked you to write flawlessly. He asked you to stay available. You did, through tears, through trials, through transitions. You kept turning the page. That simple faith, that quiet endurance, has become worship. Your obedience has been your offering all along. As you look forward, you no longer feel the pressure to predict. The future no longer looms like a mountain. It lies before you like a meadow, open, inviting, and bright with possibility. You don't need to know what's next, because you finally trust the one who does. That trust is your crown. It's invisible, but all of heaven sees it. The chapters ahead will unfold in their time. Some will be loud, filled with laughter and movement. Others will be quiet, marked by reflection and peace. But through them all, one truth will remain unchanged. You are guided, You are chosen. You are loved beyond measure. And so, you close your eyes for a moment, not to end the story, but to rest in it. You feel heaven breathing through the lines. The divine author still at work. His pen steady. His intention unwavering. The same hands that held your beginning now hold your forever. Let that truth anchor you. Your life is not a random collection of moments, but a carefully woven design of purpose. The light that began within you will not fade. It will travel through generations, through words, through the quiet legacy of faith you leave behind. The page is not blank anymore. It is radiant. Every word, every scar, every whisper of surrender has become gold ink beneath heaven's hand. The greatest chapter is not something God will write about you. It is something He continues to write through you. And as the final line of this chapter is written, peace covers you completely. The story is not over. It is eternal. The author smiles, his work alive in you, and heaven whispers over the closing page, well done, beloved one. The masterpiece is complete, but the glory continues. End quote. And now, as the final words settle into silence, the light that began as a whisper has become a flame. It burns quietly, tenderly, within you, reminding you that what you've received was never meant to end here. This isn't goodbye, it's continuation. Every line that touched your heart was meant to awaken something eternal. The story now belongs to you. When you share this message, think of it as releasing a dove into the air. It may fly farther than you ever could, carrying fragments of peace to hearts still trembling in the dark. You may never see where it lands, but heaven will. Sharing isn't about spreading words, it's about spreading warmth. When you like this message, imagine yourself lighting another candle beside this one. One flame may seem small, but together they create constellations of hope. That simple touch becomes your quiet agreement with heaven's rhythm, a soft whisper that says, I am part of this light. When you comment, write from your spirit, not your screen. Let your words fall like raindrops into fertile soil, honest, gentle, alive. Somewhere, someone will read your voice and feel seen. That's how light travels from heart to heart, word to word. When you subscribe, see it not as following, but as returning. This space will always be a sanctuary for souls in search of peace, a river where weary hearts come to rest. Stay connected, not for updates, but for reminders that you are not alone in your journey. And if your heart feels moved, donate as one plants a seed under starlight. You may never see all that it grows into, but heaven will water it. Every act of generosity becomes a silent bridge between despair and hope. Thank you for reading, for feeling, for believing. You are part of this sacred tapestry, threads of faith woven into something larger than words. May your days ahead glow with the same light you've helped keep alive.